Welcome to End Time Signs and the Headlines, brought to you by the Light of Life Ministry. Today's date is Sunday, August 10th, 2014. In a transcript of David Stockman interview on King World News, Eric King asked, David, the man who is counsel to big money around the world, Michael Belkin, just spoke with the KWN and issued a dire warning for the financial markets. I just wondered how you see things at this point with the Dow recently tumbling and everything that is happening across the globe. What should we expect? Stockman replied, well, the watchword at this point is stay out of harm's way. We are headed into a perfect storm of policy failures. This is not simply a failure by the Fed, which has inflated this massive bubble and painted itself into a corner with no clue how to get out. We are also seeing an absolute failure of American world dominance. Our foreign policy is collapsing everywhere, and yet the Washington War Party keeps wanting to do more of the same. This confrontation with Putin is utterly out of hand and unnecessary. Now we have a trade war that is going on, or is going to ricochet through an already fragile European economy. We hear today that Obama is considering going back into Iraq. What is he thinking? If you layer that on top of an already fragile financial bubble that is going to burst, I think we are in a zone of extreme danger. It's hard to predict whether this will be the big destructive bear market that inevitably has to come, or simply just another dip that encourages the robots and the trained seals on Wall Street to buy for another move higher. But one of these times we're going to have a big failure, and I don't think it's too far down the road. If you look at the stock market, it has gone nearly straight up for the last 64 months. If you look at the chart of the S&P 500, you can see that year after year the dips get shallower and more infrequent, and that is not a healthy chart. This is a sign of a market that is not discounting the actual real-world future, but simply trading the word clouds and the liquidity that is being injected by not only our central bank, but central banks around the world. The difficulty is I don't believe that this central bank act can be kept up. We have had such tremendous expansions of balance sheets that even the central bankers are now beginning to second-guess themselves, become divided among themselves, and begin to worry about how they get out of the corner they have painted themselves into. So those are the factors that will ultimately cause a major collapse. It's just a question of when the black swan comes flying in, or when the confidence in this whole central banking illusion finally breaks down in these markets. The rest of this interview can be viewed on our website at endtimesigns.wordpress.com. Dr. Sounds alarm on worldwide explosion of death possible from Ebola. This could very well be the most important show you listen to. Steve Quayle brings a guest to the Hagman and Hagman show on August 8, 2014, a doctor he calls S, then hands the stage, so to speak, to him to explain what we are seeing, what we need to be prepared for, and what the dangers of the Ebola virus, which has killed over 900 in Africa, are to the global community. This doctor is a cardiologist and MD, has been in the medical profession for decades, and informs listeners that what we are seeing in Africa right now is just the tip of the iceberg and the perfect setup for the perfect storm, an infectious disease storm. S explains that by the time patients are systematic, they are also catastrophic. He also warns what he sees are the risks, concerns, problems, and that this is not sci-fi, not imaginary, but a very real possibility to become a global pandemic, where we could see a 3-week lull, think authorities have a handle on it, but then see a worldwide death rate explosion. The risk, as he explains it, is the exponential amplification of mortality, where 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 16, etc. Due to the long delay in Ebola victims becoming symptomatic, the long testing process, the high ineffectivity, and the fact that there is no cure, along with the 25 to 90% mortality rate of the deadly disease. He warns people to be prepared and offers a way they can do so. S also points out how the medical resources in the countries already battling this Ebola outbreak are inadequate, but highlights from personal experience how local and state hospitals in the U.S. and elsewhere, countries not poor on resources, but are also unprepared for a massive influx of symptomatic patients. His statements are made calmly, clear and concise, listing his reasoning as well as quotes from other experts, believing that the general public needs to understand the potential and prepare accordingly. This Hagmann and Hagmann show is definitely one to listen to, take notes on, look up the information he is offering, the testimonies you can find on C-SPAN, look at the latest announcements by WHO declaring this an emergency, not just of concern to infected areas, but internationally, and you will find every word he says to be true. You can listen to this video at our website, at our blog, endtimesigns.wordpress.com. ISIS supporters flash Islamic flag in front of White House, threaten America. A photo posted to Twitter on Saturday by a supporter of the terrorist group the Islamic State, aka ISIS or ISIL, shares a cell phone screen with a large image in the back of the black flag of jihad being held up to the White House so that the White House is seen in the background. The Twitter account MHAJR93 posted the image. The undated photo was taken at night from the Pennsylvania Avenue side of the White House. The brightly lit north portico is clearly seen in the background of the photo. Alongside the photo was the propaganda message, "We are here, America, near our target soon." A message from ISIS to U.S. hashtag employed by ISIS and its supporters after President Obama launched airstrikes on ISIS forces in northern Iraq this week was used. The counter hashtag, a message from U.S. to ISIS, was also used. The photo was posted again hours later with the message, "We are everywhere." Earlier this week, the Gateway Pundit reported on ISIS's vow to one day raise the flag of Muhammad in the White House. Representative Frank Wolf of Virginia told Newsmax TV Friday he is concerned Americans fighting with ISIS overseas could bring their jihad back to the United States. Quote, "There are over 115 American citizens with passports who are a part of ISIS, and there are several thousand Europeans from France, from England, from Germany, from Scandinavian countries who are fighting with ISIS," Wolf said on America's Forum. In fact, one of them who went over to fight was from Florida, came back, went back, said hateful things on the internet, and was killed in a suicide bombing. So this has the potential to come to the homeland. CNN reported the U.S. waged 3 rounds on airstrikes on ISIS positions on Saturday, and the photo was posted again today with yet another threat. Gulf Coast of Florida turning blood red near the Florida coast. The coastal plains of Florida are facing serious threat from a large red tide bloom that has not been seen for almost a decade. The red tide is posing devastating infestation of the marine life of Florida. The incoming tide has already claimed lives of thousands of fish in the Gulf of Mexico and is now reported to be closing in on the coast. The red tide bloom is expected to wash ashore, striking the mainland in about 2 weeks. According to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, the bloom is spread about 80 miles in length and approximately 50 miles in width in the Gulf of Mexico, but presently the tide is from 40 to 90 miles offshore. It could have large impacts if it were to move inshore. It has been killing a lot of marine species, especially fish, as it waits offshore. Brandon Bassino, spokesman of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, said. The makings of a mass-level extinction event in the world's oceans appear disturbingly imminent as marine species after marine species washes ashore in the Pacific West Coast. Ailing seals, dead fish, missing pelicans, and much more are being reported in the media as scientists struggle to figure out what exactly is causing entire marine ecosystems to suffer and die, seemingly inexplicably. Much of the carnage is being reported in California, where baby sea lions in distress have been washing ashore in record numbers. The Wall Street Journal reports that for the second year in a row, more baby sea lions than ever are having trouble surviving after being abandoned by their mothers, the direct result of a lack of food. According to the results, a record 367 California sea lions were admitted to the Marine Mammal Center near San Francisco between January and May, which is nearly 5 times the normal average. In Southern California, more than 600 sea lions, or twice the normal average, have been taken in so far this year. This is on top of the 1,600 that were treated last year. For the second time since June, Russian nuclear bombers escorted by fighter jets have flown near the U.S. in Canadian airspace around Alaska in recent days, prompting precautionary intercepts by American warplanes. The encounters come amid Russian war games along the border with eastern Ukraine, raising Western concerns that Moscow might invade to support pro-Moscow separatists battling the Kiev government since spring. The U.S. Air Command official acknowledged at least 16 Russian forays around Alaska and northern Canada in the past 10 days, describing them as routine training missions. One intercept spotted a Russian spy plane among the Tupolev Tu-95 Bear bombers and Tu-142 reconnaissance and anti-submarine aircraft. Over the past week, NORAD has visually identified Russian aircraft operating in and around the U.S. air defense identification zones. Major Beth Smith of the U.S. Northern Command and the North American Aerospace Defense Command told the Washington Free Beacon. Strange rumblings coming from the Tuya, I have no idea how to pronounce that, are confounding observers as to their possible source. Visser reports that visitors to the mesa-shaped volcano in northeast Iceland have been unable to determine if the persistent rumblings coming from the volcano are being caused by an avalanche, landslide, or something else entirely. Rangers around the volcano were the first to announce the rumblings, which lasted about 30 seconds. Yesterday, Icelandic rescuers who had been searching for a group of French tourists found them at the foot of the volcano, safe and sound, although they said there had been an avalanche. News of the avalanche was reported, but upon further inspection, no evidence of an avalanche could be found except for the rumbling. Avalanches have been reported from mountains all over Iceland recently, which is highly unusual for the summer months. A meteorologist at the Met Office told reporters that they intend to get to the bottom of the mystery. A major lava flow started on August 7, 2014 at Stromboli Volcano, Italy. A new vent opened at 5:16 UTC at the northeast base of Saria del Fuoco Scarp. Lava quickly covered the entire plateau and descended. INGV Catania reports that in a short time, lava flows reached the sea in several fronts. The activity was accompanied by numerous landslides. Different from the overflows during July and yesterday evening, this time the northern side of the northeast crater was affected. First, it seems that a significant collapse occurred, accompanied by the opening of a new effusive located in the northern base or flank of the northeast crater. How much of the crater itself was affected is too difficult to judge at this point. And lastly, research confirms that pastors are deliberately keeping flock in the dark. George Barna is a foremost researcher of modern Christianity in the country. He recently spoke about a 2-year research project studying why modern-day preachers and churches are so silent regarding political issues. The result of his research only confirms what I've been trying to tell people for years. But there was one thing his research uncovered that did somewhat surprise me. OneNewsNow.com covered the story. On Thursday, George Barna, research expert and founder of the Barna Group, shared the American Family Radio's Today's Issues about a new information he's compiling at American Culture and Faith Institute over the past 2 years, gauging where theologically conservative pastors are at politically. What we're finding is that when we ask them about all the key issues of the day, 90% of them are telling us, yes, the Bible speaks to every one of these issues. Then we ask them, well, are you teaching your people what the Bible says about these issues? And the numbers drop to less than 10% of pastors who say they will speak to it. When researchers ask those pastors what else they are willing to do to get their people active in the political process, Barna says it's almost nothing. So the thing that struck me has been that when we talk about the separation of church and state, it's that churches have separated themselves from the activities of the state, and that's to the detriment of state and people, stated the researcher. That 90% of Americans' pastors are not addressing any of the salient issues affecting Christian people's political or societal lives should surprise no one, especially the readers of this column. It has been decades since even a sizably minority of pastors have bothered to educate and inform their congregations as to the biblical principles relating to America's political, cultural, and societal lives. But the part of the research that did somewhat surprise me by this statement by Barna, what we're finding is that when we ask them about all the key issues of the day, 90% of them are telling us, yes, the Bible speaks to every one of these issues. Then we will ask them, well, are you teaching your people what the Bible says about these issues? And the numbers drop to less than 10% of the pastors who say they will speak of it. That's not the case for the Light of Life ministry. Our ministry has been ongoing since 2005, and we have made a conscious effort to help people to see the signs of the end times, to correlate them to the scriptures. We encourage you to visit the links on our sites, to visit endtimesigns.wordpress.com, thelightoflifeministry.com, where you can find many links, many truths, many explanations of exactly what we are seeing in these end times. That's it for this week, folks. Take care, and we'll see you next week.